Hey everybody, it's Alfred Brown with Footballguys, and I'm asking the question, has Tua Tagovailoa finally become a top 12 Dynasty quarterback? I'm really excited to dive into this one as a Dolphins fan. Let's get this underway.
Perfect.
In 2021, his fantasy production, well, it wasn't great. Tua played in 13 games and finished as the fantasy quarterback 26. However, let's dive a little deeper, and when we take out a couple of these games, we remove his Week 2 game versus Buffalo where he left in the first quarter with broken ribs, and then we remove his Week 10 game versus the Ravens where mysteriously he wasn't healthy enough to start, but he was healthy enough to come in and win the game at halftime. We then have a nice per game average of 226 passing yards per game, about 1.5 passing touchdowns per game, 11 rushing yards, and then a rushing touchdown every so often. You start to put this together, and if you give him a full 16-game fantasy season, that would have led to 318.4 fantasy points, or an average of 19.9 fantasy points per game. That would have been good enough to be the quarterback 9, ahead of Dak Prescott. And I get it, you don't want to extrapolate to a full 16-game season because that almost rarely happens. But even if he had played just 13 full games, we're talking about Tua Tagovailoa being the quarterback 12 in fantasy. Now, there's outside factors like Lamar Jackson missing time, Kyler Murray missing time, but what we're seeing here is that Tua Tagovailoa can actually be a productive fantasy quarterback, not just NFL quarterback. He's not necessarily only the safe guy that we all think he is. Let's even go deeper than just extrapolating for a whole season. Let's look at every single time he dropped back to pass. Tua was 18th in points per drop back according to playerprofiler.com. Now, I'm not suggesting that 18th is going to blow you away when you're trying to win your fantasy week, but it gives you a good idea of his floor. Now, let's talk about the infamous deep ball, or lack thereof, right? With his deep ball completion, Tua was actually first in the league. The problem is it just didn't happen all that much. He hit 15 out of 30 deep balls according to playerprofiler.com, which was obviously good enough for 50%, first in the league. Now, at Alabama, we're talking about a quarterback that was averaging 11.3 yards per attempt. That put him in the 98th percentile among college quarterbacks at that time. Last season, he saw that number dip all the way down to 6.8 yards per attempt. That was 23rd amongst quarterbacks. So why did this happen? What changed for Tua going into the NFL? It's obviously the team around him. He had the second worst pass protection rate according to Player Profiler as well. 89% of his throws were pressured at a rate that led to him to throw the ball in less than 3 seconds. I know we have a lot of fast players in the NFL, but a lot of them aren't going to make it deep in less than 3 seconds. That was a league worst 2.1 seconds of pocket time, making Miami's offensive line historically bad. Now they went out and they've made some big moves. They signed Teron Armstead. They also signed guard Connor Williams. This should help with the offensive line. Basically, Tua's a really accurate quarterback. I know he gets a lot of flack on social media, but look at his true completion percentage. When you factor out throwaways and drops, he completed 73% of his passes, 9th in the NFL. He was 10th in both pressured completion rate and clean pocket completion rate, meaning it didn't matter if he had a clean pocket or he was getting pressured, the guy was able to complete his passes. Also, he was number 1 in red zone completion rate. So yeah, it didn't quite matter where he was in the field. He's an accurate quarterback. There's no way getting around that. He does lack with some of those elite tools that you want. He doesn't have the rocket launcher arm. I'll admit that. But he is an accurate quarterback that can make plays. Now, the team around him has gotten so much better. And I mean a lot better. He already had Jaylen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, but now the team went out and they added guys that kind of underrated, like Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Alec Ingold, fullbacks. Love your fullbacks, okay? Cedric Wilson, Tyreek Hill. Yeah, let that last name marinate for a minute. Tyreek Hill has now been added to this arsenal of players for Tua Tagovailoa. So even if he's not throwing the ball very far, the yards after catch are going to be monumental. The Miami Dolphins will be much improved at blocking and so fast. Mike McDaniel loves to use a lot of motion, take advantage of the speed, get Tua out to the outside with some play action, and we're going to see sparks fly with this Miami Dolphins offense. I don't just say that as a fan, but I say that as a student of the game that loves the type of offense that Mike McDaniel brings to this team. Now, according to Dynasty League Football.com, Tua's startup draft position is currently quarterback 17. Guys, that's a screaming value for me. Is he a top 12 Dynasty quarterback? No, not yet. But I've got him ranked as quarterback number 14, and he's the guy that I'm going to be targeting in all of my startup Dynasty drafts so that I can get a guy with a good floor, a potentially very high ceiling, and then I have the ability to stack elite talent around him, just like his NFL team did.